Welcome to Council Preview. I'm Tom Laux, Communications Director, City of Marshfield. And it's that time again, and I have Steve Barg, City Administrator, sitting next to me.
It's a very warm day, Tom. Remember those days back in the winter when we dreamed of getting above zero? Not a problem anymore, is it?
Not in July. You know, it's a warm one today. We're taping this Wednesday before the council meeting on Tuesday, July 14th. It's going to be. So today is one hot one, over almost a heat index of 100 degrees. So,
but on the bright side, you and I both just came from the groundbreaking for the new aquatic center.
Yep.
And you know, it was a good sign to see a warm day and a lot of people there. A reminder of what we'll experience next year.
Yeah, next year at this time, hopefully we can be doing maybe getting close to a ribbon cutting. We'll see where it goes.
Yep.
All right. Well, there's a few things on the council agenda that we kind of want to highlight for everybody. And we might as well just dig right into it. We're going to move down into code enforcement. How about that? That's a big one.
It really is. And you know, when we have people rate our services, we've had a couple of surveys since I've been here in 9 years, Tom. People rate most of our services very well. I mean, they give us good marks for our police and fire and all that. But one of the things that comes up in every city I've worked in, and it's come up here too, is what about neighborhood problems? What about junk cars? What about weeds? What about that guy across the street who has an old shed that needs to come down? And you know, city staff gets these calls. The mayor and council get these calls, and they're dicey. You know, in some cases, you know, it's people think, well, it's my personal property, I can do what I want with it, and in other cases, you know, there's reasons why we have protection for neighbors, that conditions need to be healthy and safe and those kind of things. So, yeah, we want to talk a little bit about this with the council. I'm going to do a presentation on Tuesday night, Tom. It'll last about 20 minutes, and then take questions from the council, and I think there might be quite a few, because this is kind of right down where you live. You know, when that person calls you and says, I am angry.
So when you're talking about code enforcement, how far does that go? Is it tall grass, bad paint on a house? What are you looking at?
Any and all of the above, yeah. It really tends to be something where a person looks at their neighborhood, or you know, they're driving downtown, they're passing by some other houses, and they really maybe are irritated. They look at a home that continues to have grass not being mowed, or that paint is all off, or that shed is falling down, or how can that guy have a car up on blocks in his driveway, you know, no license plate? And so it really does run the gamut. And that's one of the things that makes it difficult to do code enforcement. I've got kind of an outline there that I'm going to work from. It covers a lot of departments. So usually when you call it City Hall, Tom, you say, I've got a problem with my street, I'm going to call the engineering department. You know, or I've got a problem with a bill, I'm going to call the finance department. A lot of people don't know, and I think even sometimes the mayor and council don't know, where these all get parceled out to, because they go to a variety of different departments: public works, police, development services. A number of people might get one of these calls depending upon what the exact issue is.
Yeah, there is quite a bit. Now, there are ordinances in place already. Junk cars, I bet there's one here already. So you got to make sure that if you're a homeowner or even a landlord, that you have to abide by these rules, or you possibly could get a fine.
Could get a fine, could get a citation and sent to court. You know, we have municipal court downtown at City Hall once a month, and you might have to go before a judge. These are all things that can happen. And in fact, honestly, if you don't mow your property for a certain period of time, the city could come out and mow it and bill you, and you know, charge the reasonable cost plus any overhead or whatever. I'm not sure how that's done, you know, because it's not something we want to have to do, to be mowing properties. The real thing, if you look down the list on my presentation, kind of the outline that I'm going to work from, Tom, is some of the dicey things that come up. In other words, okay, so great. So one of our staff sends a letter, and in a week you have to do it, and you do it, and we're all happy, right? Well, that happens a lot of times. What if they don't comply? What's next? Citation, court? What if that doesn't even resolve it? When does a city attorney get involved in terms of other remedies to try and get that old shed taken down? And there's some things that come up that make it a little bit difficult. You see on your list where you know, we might have to go to some extra efforts to try and get compliance, and that is the goal, to get compliance.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, you know, it kind of hurts the people around if they're trying to sell their own property, and if the property down the road is really dilapidated, it actually probably decreases the value of their own home.
It does. And neighborhoods are usually, this is what I learned when I was early in government, Tom, neighborhoods are usually getting better or they're spiraling downward, and you certainly don't want to see your neighborhood spiraling downward. So, I mean, and some of these are difficult properties. I mean, sometimes maybe a home is going through foreclosure, and the staff tries to find who's responsible, and the property owner says, I'm out of it, call the bank. And the bank says, well, you know, we've already given it over to somebody else, so now it's going to the county because the taxes aren't paid. I mean, trying to figure out who you can hold responsible to clean these properties up is one of the challenges that we sometimes face. But we really do our best to try and get a resolution for the case.
So what's the current process now? Are we kind of waiting for a complaint, or do we actually go out and look and file a complaint as staff?
We are complaint-based here, which means that we wait for a complaint to be filed. And that's one of the questions I expect to get from the council on Tuesday night, because, you know, I've heard this before. Well, you know, it's at a main intersection. You're driving through the intersection of Chestnut and you know, 5th or whatever, and you know, why do you have to have a complaint? Can't the city staff person, the building inspector, or the engineering person see that and write it down? We have that geo reporting system. And you know, sometimes staff might do that, Tom, they certainly can. But more times than not, when the building inspector or the engineering tech or somebody is going out to a site, they're driving like you and I would. Okay, now I got to turn left here on this road, go on that road. They're not necessarily looking at the side of the road at the homes and the yard conditions. So most of what we get is complaint-based. If you're watching us right now and you think, doesn't city staff know that the property across me has had an old car with no tires and all this stuff for 2 months? We maybe don't, and we need you to tell us.
Yeah, and they can do that through several options, exactly like our geo-reporting. They can call, they can email, they can come down to City Hall. I mean, there's lots of options, but like you say, they need to let us know.
They do. I mean, we otherwise don't know, even if you think that we do. And I want to say to all involved, too, the goal is compliance, compliance, compliance. You know, sometimes people get fines, they get sent to court, all these kind of things. We don't want that. That's not our goal, to make a property owner's life miserable. What our goal is to do is get compliance with the code so that everyone can hopefully live peacefully and you know, as a good neighborhood would.
Right. Nobody likes the old dilapidated couch, the big TV sitting out on the curb, sitting there in the rain. It's not good.
No, and we all have things come up where maybe we have something in our driveway for a couple days, you know, and a friend's coming to pick it up or whatever. But we're talking about, you know, conditions that linger on well past that, where the neighbors begin to say to themselves, wait a minute, now, you know, it's been 6 weeks. When are we going to see that get cleaned out? So we want people to find out, and I hope people learn from this presentation, Tom, who the main players are, what the codes are that we mainly deal with, and who to call and or to email for help.
We're not right now looking to change the current process and how we do that at this point.
Nope, this is informational for the mayor and council and for the citizens. Kind of hopefully a good summary of what we do today. The council might say, you know, are there things we can do better? Could we maybe adopt a tighter code in the area of disrepair buildings? And we can talk about that, but the purpose of this is simply no action required, just here's what we do and how we do it.
All right, well, we'll look forward to your presentation on Tuesday night, and we'll see what the council has to say if they have any questions to you. Let's talk about borrowing. It's a big deal, and we're going to be borrowing some money. Pool is one of them.
Yeah, it is, and the amount you see in front of you is a little bit less than $7 million, and that sounds like a lot of money. Keep in mind that $3 million is for that beautiful new aquatic center that we talked about at the beginning of the program, and boy, I think people are going to be so excited to see the water slides and all the great things that are going to make that an amazing amenity for the community. But the other amount of a little bit less than $4 million is mainly the typical stuff we do, Tom, but it's worth noting. We try to do about $2 million a year in what's called asphalt resurfacing. That's where we don't rebuild the street, but we grind up the existing surface and lay down another 2 inches of asphalt, and that buys another 10, 15 or more years in a street that otherwise, you know, would be maybe going downhill. A big one that we're borrowing for this year is, you know, is Cleveland Street. That work is going on right now, and you know, we need to be able to account for those costs. But we have some other minor things that go on: PD, fire equipment. We help with some projects over at the UW. An assortment of odds and ends that make up the rest of that total. But really, 75% at least every year is for major street work.
Yeah, looking down the list here, what is an MRI program? It sounds like something that would be health related.
Yeah.
It's probably not.
It's really not. That's our residential program. Okay. It's where you, if you want to buy a vacant property and build a home, we're trying to incentivize you to do that. So if you do that and you build a home, once you get the building permit or occupancy, I forget how it works, you actually get a cash amount. In other words, it actually helps you. So we're trying to find ways to get more housing. One of the things we've talked about here is we need more homes of various types and values, and so we're trying to continue that program for another year this year.
So this is for this fiscal year, right, 2020?
It is, and you might say, well, wait a minute. When I borrow money at home, I'm borrowing money for something I want to do. Here we're borrowing money for something that we are doing, but the city obviously would have the funds to cover these otherwise, but these monies we're looking to borrow are for the costs that of projects that are going on right now, and it will tie those debts to those particular projects.
So some of the stuff has already been paid for, probably out of our current budget.
Some perhaps, or at least the work has been done or is happening right now. You see $175,000 for technology software at the top. Well, we're in the process right now. We're purchasing and installing and implementing the software. So, a lot of these things are in progress as we go through the borrowing effort.
All right. Well, we'll see how that works, and it also will hopefully give us a good interest rate. Is that right?
Yeah, the interest rates have been really good. There was a borrowing earlier this year by the Marshfield utilities, and I believe they got 1.4%. Can you imagine that? I mean, years ago, when I was in, going way back to other jobs I had, but even earlier in my time here in Marshfield, if somebody said you could get 1.4% on a borrowing, I'd have been amazed. But rates are still, I think, fairly low. So we're hoping to come in at least under 2%.
Although 1.4 on 6 million, if it was, still a good chunk of change.
Oh, it is. It is. But in the world where we've been before at 3 and 4%, it's a huge savings in terms of the debt service.
Well, we go back to the 70s, and you may be talking about 16, 18%. I don't know about cities.
Think about mortgages back then.
They were 18%.
They were 18%.
At least.
Yeah.
I think early 80s, late 70s.
It sounds criminal now, doesn't it?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, my parents always say that, but you're lucky. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not that lucky.
No.
So, all right, we'll find out what that's all about here from our finance director, Ron Alman.
Yep.
Let's move to the next one, CIP. That's still sticking around here.
It is. That's the project that keeps on giving, right?
Yep.
This will be the 4th time we've talked about it, and we are narrowing it down. One of the things Council's been concerned about is holding the line on borrowing. In fact, a lot of the focus on the sheets that you have in front of you is the second page, the page that talks about long-term debt, and that's where we borrow money for 2021 and beyond, but we obviously have to pay it back, right? And we've been trying to borrow less than we have in past years because we have a 5-year financial plan we just did with Ellers that suggests we need to cut the borrowing a little bit. Our goal always is to make sure that we borrow less than we pay off in principal on existing debt, which makes sense, and you're going in the right direction. And we have reduced our debt in that way in recent years. A couple of years ago, Tom, we were at 60% of what the state said we could borrow, and now we're down to, I think, 53 or something. So we've made some progress. But the real issues here, a couple big ones. One of them is that the council wanted to move, if you remember, East 17th Street, that reconstruction project by the fairgrounds. They wanted to move that up from 2023 to 2021. This one's been backed up a lot of years. And I don't live over by the fairgrounds, but when I'm over there, I see what they're talking about. It really does need to be redone and improved for the safety of people over in that area. But the other thing that's gotten a lot of discussion, Tom, is our schedule for replacement of vehicles and equipment. When you buy a piece of equipment, the manufacturer says the useful life of this piece of equipment is 10 years. Let's say it's a loader or a backhoe over at Public Works. Well, then does that mean that when 10 years is up, you automatically replace it? Well, the question Council's saying is maybe it has another 2 or 3 years left in it. What's the maintenance history? If it's a vehicle, how many miles are on it? And so even as we're talking right now, I'm working with department heads to try and refine that a little bit and make sure that the items we're bringing forward to them for vehicles and equipment for replacement are ones that not only are meeting the length of time that the manufacturer says they would last, but that we can demonstrate that there really truly is a need there, that whether it's the appearance, the maintenance history, the excessive use, other problems that the vehicle or equipment is experiencing, we really would do well to purchase the equipment again. I own older cars, and I just recently put $900 into my 2005 Saturn, and I did it with the expectation that I'm going to get some more time out of it. But you have to take a look and say, before I make a lot of repairs, does it make more sense to buy a new one? That's the same kind of thing that the council is asking us to evaluate carefully before we make final decisions on what's going to be on this list.
Oh yeah, the saying, a nickel and dime you. Don't want that. It happens in older vehicles and equipment. maybe a different question, but I was just kind of curious, and I think it kind of goes along with when Public Works or another department requests a vehicle or some kind of higher end part, that's already been budgeted pretty much right in the budget, but do they have to ask again for that? Is that, I'm a little confused on that.
You know, if you go to Board of Public Works meetings, you'll see, you know, Chris Hawley the other night was asking to purchase a truck, and as part of his presentation he said, the money's been budgeted, we budgeted $35,000 and I've got a bid at $29,000. But even there, even though they have to go through that anyway, even there, Ken Bargander, I believe, said, I know the money's there, I know it's been budgeted, but you know, the police sometimes has these trucks and they get rid of them after they used them for a while. Might one of those work for you before they just go sell it at auction? So the answer to your question is that they're authorized, but they still have to come before the board and make sure that the board would approve the purchase at that time.
Really?
You know, for example, COVID-19. You know, what if COVID-19 had a negative effect on our finances? I don't think it really has to this point, but you know, between the time you approve a budget in November and the time someone wants to buy a vehicle in July, things can change. So we always look for the blessing of elected officials as we move forward.
Is that on any large item in the city anyway, or is it more just Public Works?
It's on those larger Public Works pieces of equipment.
There's not like a threshold of like 10,000 or 20,000?
No,
okay.
no. There's a threshold at which you need to sometimes get quotes or bids.
Yep.
And we always try to get multiple quotes, even for smaller purchases. But yeah, if your item's more than $15,000, we expect that you're going to get competing bids before you go out and make a purchase. So
some of that stuff has gone back to committee, not on the CIP thing, but things that you were talking about earlier on cars, and so we'll see where that kind of goes. And I can understand their reasoning.
Yeah, they're really, and you know, I don't think I understood them at first, Tom, what they were asking for, because I don't think what they were saying was connecting with what I was thinking. But what they're really just asking us to do is be prudent, and you know, make sure they're not saying use bad equipment and use junk vehicles, but just make sure that you give a good evaluation before you just routinely, go replace.
Yep, definitely. All right, what are we going to move into next? We have a few more topics, don't we, here?
Yep.
I don't want to miss them, and this was a 2021 budget request. These are from outside entities?
Yeah, what this is, you know, every year, and I've been here since 2011, every year these agencies say, can I get another $5,000? We fund Civic Band. We fund the school patrol through the school, that they have an annual event to say thank you to all those people. We give money to Up a Mansion for the upkeep of that building. We've given money to drug prevention activities through Macy. And, you know, a couple of years ago, the council said, wait a minute, hold it. Let's talk about how we do this, and staff agreed. So we came up with this policy that you've got a little bit down in your packet, and it's a policy for deciding how and when to fund nonprofit agencies through the city budget. And if you take a look at it, I mean, just the first paragraph under purpose and intent, I'll read some of it. But it says, the city generally does not provide funds to entities outside of city government, nor does the city budget funds for external uses. However, from time to time, the council may be asked to assist a community organization to provide a service beneficial to the community as a whole, or to, in some fashion, meet a community need. So you look at some of these and you say, well, okay, is this something that the city benefits from and we don't provide ourselves, and it meets a community need? So a couple of years ago, we came up with this policy. Well, last year, I think it was your first year here last year, and we had a special meeting at the end of August where everybody looking for money, whether it's 500 or 50,000, came before the council, and they made a presentation and they answered questions. Well, when it was over, Tom, when we got into October, the council voted to fund all these requests, every single one of them, at the full value. So staff has been saying, okay, we don't want to put more process in here than you need. Having gone through this once and having found the value of these organizations, do you want to do that same thing again? Do you want to have a special meeting where they all come before you one after another and make their pitch? Do you want to do it another way? How do you want to try to decide what you're going to fund? And I'm going to make the point that as much as I respect these organizations, the council needs to keep in mind that they're fighting for the same money in the same pie as Public Works, parks, police and fire. So, these are important dollars that we're handing out. And we'll see what they want to do. We'll see if they want to stick with that same policy and plan going forward.
What are we talking about? How much money it is normally given out to these nonprofit groups?
Last year the total was $103,000.
Okay, so that's quite a bit of money. I guess that's taxpayer money, right?
It's taxpayer money. Yep, it is. And like I said, take the drug prevention for a second. Okay. Well, the city of Marshfield is never going to do its own drug prevention plan. Who's going to do that? Maybe the police department if they had a lot of time and resources. But the thought is, well, okay, that benefits our community, and that helps the police. So I mean, there's rationale for every request, but the council needs to scrutinize whether these really fit into our mission and if we can afford to fund them. And again, we just want to make sure that this policy that they did last year, do they want to keep doing it, or do they feel that there's a better or different way to make the determinations on who gets funded?
Well, we have to ask because there's a few new council members on, so things
We do.
have changed.
This is true.
Yep. And I think it's good for them to kind of weigh into the decision because they're the ones that give the final okay.
They are. And let me just end by saying, Tom, these are very worthwhile groups. I'm sitting here talking about it. Somebody might be watching at home thinking, you don't want to give money for civic band? Every single Wednesday I go down there. COVID stopped that this year, but normally every Wednesday during the late spring and summer, and we listen to great music. Steve Barg doesn't want that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that they need to review these, scrutinize them, decide what they can afford to do and what fits best into their mission. And we just want to know how they want to proceed.
Yep, totally understand on that one. So let's move into Marshfield Municipal Code. That's like a big thing I just said, municipal code. That's like pages of 200,000 pages. Who knows? What's this about?
It's ridiculous. Well, this is about the order of business, and I don't know. You worked in Wisconsin Rapids. I don't know if Rapids has codified its agenda. We have, and so when we decide to change the order of the agenda, we need to amend the ordinance. So right now, we have a couple things. First of all, we have a section called. Where is it? Consent agenda, down number 11 on your page, down at the bottom of one of my handouts here. And under consent agenda, a couple years ago, I said, wait a minute, let's try and figure out how to do this best. What had been happening, Tom, is the council would approve all these minutes, and if you can picture at the end of consent agenda, it says, by approving these minutes, you council members are approving all the action items in these minutes. Well, that's fine, except sometimes, the council might not have read all the minutes, and they might not know that they're approving something very significant, maybe a $100,000 purchase, or maybe a new policy that they never thought about. So what I've been doing the last couple of years is I've been separating, and this is a list right here that I've been using, and I've been saying if it's a resolution, a contract, a lease, a new policy, a purchase of $10,000 or more, I'm going to flag these, and I'm going to put them as bullet points. You see me do this with finance, budget and personnel, and Board of Public Works especially. Bullet point these under the minutes, so that if you're a member of the council, you're saying, okay, consent agenda, that's no big deal. Wait a minute, we're going to spend $25,000 on a contract with ABC Company? I want to know more about this. It kind of makes them take a closer look at the minutes. But a question's been raised even among staff, that I work with, department heads. Well, Steve, what's magical about these items? How come sometimes you take some of the items out of the minutes and bullet point them, and other ones you just, what if they don't read the other ones? Are those not important? And from talking to the city attorney, he felt that there's some logic to what I'm doing here, but we really need to go back and get the council to formally bless this, if that's what they want to do, if they like this approach. And maybe they'd like to see a different approach. We'll find out. The other thing that the city attorney has flagged is we have F and G, if you look at the meeting agenda, mayor's comments and council comments. And he'd like to kind of maybe rework it so that the title of those is more like commendations and announcements. So maybe, hey, thanks to everybody who worked on the fundraising committee for the new aquatic center. Or hey, I want you all to know there's a special meeting on August 1st where we're going to sit down with members of the school district or whatever. But not open season, because otherwise a council member or the mayor might start talking about things that really should have been agenda items. And so we're going to try and gear people to bring those up at the end of the agenda under items for future agendas. The city attorney just wants to make sure, Tom, that we don't have conversations develop that somebody is at home saying, if I'd have known they were going to talk about this, I would have gone to the meeting. Well, they weren't supposed to get into a conversation about it, but it kind of flowed from one of these.
Oh, and it happens. You're right.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, yeah, it does.
So this is nothing against the mayor and council at all, but just making sure that we only bring up things that are informational, really, in nature.
So was this changed when you came on, the consent agenda style?
Well, I think we always had a consent agenda.
Okay.
But again, like if you look at the one we have right here, you have bullet points 1, 2, and 3 under finance, budget, and personnel. When I first came here, there were no bullet points. So they would have approved, on page 2, they would have approved the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee agenda or minutes from July 7th. And all those items that I have there, the council should have known that they're approving them. They should have read the agenda and known that they're approving a new policy on overtime, that they're approving a resolution on appropriations. And I just kind of said, I think there's certain items that I think are significant enough to be called out.
But they can call them out here.
Oh, absolutely.
So if they want to say on finance, budget, and personnel, I want to withhold item H from the agenda, can they do that? Is that the way they
Absolutely,
do it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if they read the minutes and find something
Right.
troubling that's not bullet pointed, hey, look,
Right.
I don't like what they're talking about on July 25th. Absolutely.
Well, it's a little different in Rapids. They actually, on those committees like we have, those were read in by the council chair, or the chair of that committee.
At the meeting?
At the meeting.
Okay.
Every agenda point was read, and then they would say, what are you going to withhold? But it's
Okay.
just every city does it different, and that's how it works.
Well, I may hear a lot of things. I may hear on Tuesday night that they want to have every action item bulleted. Every time they make a motion, I want to see it bulleted. Or they might say, Steve, you don't need to do this at all. It's up to us to read the minutes. You ought not have to call out items of significance. So I think this is a good approach. I think it tells the public. I think it tells the public, the person at home, who doesn't really care if there's a $25 purchase, but they want to know if there's a $25,000 contract that their officials are signing on to.
Yeah, this definitely, I didn't know how you did it, so I'll just read it. Resolutions, contracts, leases, policies, purchase of equipment, 10,000 or greater, personal items of like hiring, promotion, pay grades. Significant changes in operation and direction are the things that you look at to take out of our consent agenda and put it in bullet point. Which is, so you're not just picking and choosing what you think. So there is a rhyme for your reasoning.
There is, and I've had a couple of department heads question whether these are more important than other items on the agenda, and I totally respect that, and if the council wants to make changes. But I like the idea that whatever the main things are, you always want to make the main thing. Let's call those out so the council and the public can see the major items that are being recommended for approval.
Yep, most important to the top, what I call inverted pyramid.
Yeah, yes.
So, all right, we got one more piece on here that you marked that you'd like to
Yeah.
go over, collective bargaining with the PD.
Well, we have every 2 or 3 years we have contract talks with our unions. Once upon a time when I first came here, we had 6 unions, but then Act 10 came along and the world changed. But we have a fire union and a police union, and right now we're coming to the end, Tom, of our 3-year union agreement with the police union. That'll end on December 31st of this year. So we have a team, a management team that meets with the union. By the way, we have very good rapport with both of our unions. We get along really well. We don't always agree, on wages and benefits and those kind of things, but we normally try and get a couple of elected officials on board, and we've sometimes had the mayor and 2 council members. So we're trying to see who on the council might be interested, kind of floated out a little bit of interest so far, and we do seem to have people who may be interested, and we want to appoint a couple of folks on Tuesday night and then start that process with the police union. And the other members of the team, Tom, are the city administrator, the human resources director, the finance director, and the affected department head, who in this case will be the police chief, Rick Gramza.
Okay. Well, we'll find out what that's all about from you, because you're going to be presenting on Tuesday the 14th. Anything else that you want to bring up?
I don't think so. It's a little bit lighter agenda in a sense. You're looking at fewer pages than we sometimes have, and of course that'll be ramping up the other way when we get into the budget, which is going on right now as department heads are putting together their requests. But it's not bad to have a meeting where we have a little bit lighter. But I think 3 or 4 of these things we talked about today, Tom, will get some pretty good discussion.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know how much more time we have left, but how do you get something on this agenda? If, is it a referral to someone? How does this work?
You're talking about the public or another
both.
council
How
member?
about the both? How about the public has something? What do they do?
Well, the public can ask for things a lot of ways. The best thing to do is contact me or an elected representative, mayor or council, and say, look, I really think you need to talk about the safety of these intersections or whatever it is, and bring it through. And then it'll be up to a council member or me working with the council and the mayor to get that put on an agenda for an upcoming meeting. Council has a place at the end of the meetings called suggested items for future agendas, and rather regularly, one or two members will, at any given meeting, will bring up something that they want to talk about at an upcoming meeting.
But that would have to probably go to a committee.
Oftentimes it goes to a committee like Finance, Budget and Personnel, or Board of Public Works. But I think you make a big point of this all the time, letting the public know that they are heard when they email and call and contact us. And I've seen a lot of agenda items. If you think back to last year, two main items. Remember the smoking in the parks and the whether or not you could have a gun in City Hall. Those both came, I think, largely through citizens asking that question. I know the one on the weapons in City Hall did. A citizen came forward, wrote an email. It got spread to the council members. Somebody said, "Let's talk about what that email was about," and we talked, 2 or 3 meetings. So your ideas are definitely considered.
Great. So they basically can contact, well, you can contact anyone really,
Yeah.
but their alderman or alderperson, I should say, is one of the best ways. Mayor, yourself, department head, and then, but officially it has to get kind of through an elected body.
Yeah, it does. And I'm a very good contact for that. I'm going to give my contact information right now. Again, my name is Steve Barg, and I'm the city administrator. My phone number is 486-2003. That's 486-2003. Email is steve.barg, and that's B-A-R-G, at ci.marshfield.wi.us. What happens a lot of times, Tom, is I get an email from somebody in the public suggesting an item that they want to be discussed. I take that email, I forward it out to the mayor and council and say, here's an email from one of our citizens. Please let me know if you'd like to see that on an agenda. Oftentimes I'll get one of the council members willing to write back and say, yep, I agree with that person. I want that on an upcoming public meeting agenda. And believe me, that happens more than you know.
That or public comment is another way to get the council, and that's on really, I think, almost all our committee meetings now.
Yeah.
It's getting to that level, I know. So there's another area that you could bring it up. But that's the nice part of what we do here in Rapids. Not all cities do that. Don't have to.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing for the public to bring up anything they want for 5 minutes or whatever time lot the mayor gives. So,
yep. And you have to realize that they're not going to discuss it that night. Right. So when you're done talking, don't stare at the council and the mayor expecting them to give you an answer. What they'll do is they'll say, thank you, we'll take that under advisement, we'll put that on an agenda, we'll ask the city administrator or the police chief or whoever to look into it, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
Yep, that's how it works. All right, Steve, thank you so much for coming by.
Good to be here, Tom. Always.
All right, and we will leave it as that. Tune in Tuesday night, July 14th already, 6 o'clock start time. And you can, again, watch it on our television if you have cable, 991. Facebook, we have it on there. We also have it on our city website, and you can click on that. It's a little bit different looking than Facebook, so if you have maybe a slower speed of internet, I suggest using that device because it takes less bandwidth, or I should say something like memory to you to operate. So I'll leave it there. I'm Tom Laux, Communications Director for the City of Marshfield. Thank you for joining us on Council Preview.